Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Aujourd'hui, une nouvelle interview et une interview que je suis particulièrement heureuse de vous présenter car il s'agit de celle de la réalisatrice brésilienne Anita Rocha da Silveira. Si je suis si heureuse de pouvoir vous présenter cette interview, c'est parce que son film Medusa, dont on va parler dans cette interview, a été vraiment l'un de mes très très gros coups de cœur du Festival de Cannes de l'été dernier. C'est un film qui parle de beaucoup de choses, mais le pitch de départ, c'est une bande de filles au Brésil qui est élevée dans des mœurs traditionnalistes chrétiennes qui décident de sortir le soir en bande, masquées, pour plus ou moins aller casser la gueule des filles qui ne rentreraient pas dans les codes qui leur sont chers. Ça, c'est le postulat de départ, mais donc après, comme je le disais, le film raconte des tas de choses. Il propose des pistes esthétiques qui sont exactement ce que j'aime voir, ce que j'ai envie de voir, ce que j'ai envie de voir proposer au cinéma en ce moment. Encore une fois, voilà, c'est vraiment un film qui m'a soufflé, je l'adore, et donc je suis vraiment ravie d'avoir eu l'opportunité d'interviewer sa réalisatrice. Donc voilà, il ne me reste plus qu'à lui laisser la parole, et j'espère que ça va vous plaire et vous donner envie d'aller voir ce film au cinéma. Hi Anita, thank you for being here. So we're here to talk about your film Medusa, which has very similar themes and visual intentions as in your previous film, Mateme por favor. So can you tell us if you thought of Medusa as a sequel to your first film?
I think not so much. The source of inspiration for Kill Me Please was the feelings I had as a teenager, my friends. But for Medusa was much more the opposite. I really want to write a character that was completely different from me, from my upbringing. I really want to talk about the political situation in Brazil. I still want to talk about women and about girls.
There is a political aspect to the film, but you also make a lot of allusions to Greek mythology. So are you interested as a director in using Greek mythology? Is it something that interests you?
Yes, I think since I was a kid, I was very fascinated about the Greek myths. I used to read them a lot growing up. And I don't know, as I'm also a script writer, the myths are always a way to get inspired. And for Medusa, that was what happened. I read one news about this group of girls that beat this woman and make her look ugly for them, like cutting the hair short and things like that. And then some weeks after, I read a similar news, but in another city in Brazil, and then another one. And then all this news, and in this moment about the ultra-right coming to power in Brazil, and that made me remind the Medusa myth, because she was punished by Athena, that was a virgin goddess, because the loss of her purity. In one version of the myth, she was raped, in the other, she had sex. But since she was no longer a virgin, she was punished by Athena. So this idea of a woman punishing another woman was the starting point for Medusa.
So you think the film is sort of a reinterpretation of the myth of Medusa?
Yes, a little bit. Was more like a starting point and also the ending point, I think. Was the starting point for the inspiration. Because for me, thinking that today in Brazil, I could still find things happen that resonate with a myth that has thousands of years. That was something that worried me. Like this idea of a woman having to control the other woman bodies, the way us as women grow up, having to control ourselves, and then we start to control the ones that are surrounding us. And also and also in the end of the film, because a lot of paintings of Medusa, she's screaming in the moment that her head is being cut off. And her expressions are normally an expression of anger. She's not afraid, but she's anger. And I think this anger, this scream of anger, is something that can be very powerful. So that was also another aspect, but more about the imaginary of Medusa, not so much about the myth.
Why do you tend to film in a very beautiful way injuries and scars, and why is it so important?
I don't know. I don't think scars are ugly. In the case of, for example, of Mari's scars, it's something that's ugly for her because of her upbringing. But then she started to not think that as something ugly during the film anymore. She started to embrace it. And actually, the scar of Mari is inspired in another Greek myth, a Chiron myth, because Chiron has that wound that was the wound that made his woman, that make he start to relate with the woman, because he has a scar that couldn't heal. And so I started to think about this scar in Mari's face as something that would open her to her humanity, because in the beginning of the film, she's almost like a robot. She's like following the others, and the scars, something that make her get in touch with her humanity and get in touch with other feelings and get in touch with another side of her. So the scar is something necessary for her to open her mind. And she thinks it is ugly in the beginning, but then she starts to not care about that anymore.
Flesh and religion are very important, yes, in your film. So why do you film them in a horrific way?
I think because of the Brazilian reality. I don't know, in the last, 10 years, the conservative rise in Brazil is very linked with religion. And Rio de Janeiro is a city that has been electing a lot of ultra-right politics, and a lot of them are very religious in a not so good way. But my intention with Medusa was more to talk about some groups in this community, not about the whole evangelical community, but about some groups that are the groups that are occupying power and that are getting rich. And they had this speech about don't trust the others, don't trust this, you only have to trust what is in this group. They have a speech that makes people to close themselves in a bubble. And these groups are growing up a lot. And Rio de Janeiro state is a place that these groups have grown up like crazy in the last 10 years. So it's, as someone that lives in Rio, something that I observe in my day-to-day life. In my first feature, Kill Me Please, I was inspired by a particular church here. That's a church that's more how to say, focused about getting teenagers. It's a very youth church. That's a little bit more light version. But for Medusa, I was inspired in another one. That's a church that is electing a lot of politicians here and getting a lot of money in the middle of this.
Speaking about groups, in Máteme por favor and in Medusa, you have groups of teenage girls for characters. Why do you choose these characters? Why are they the best characters to tell your stories?
I don't know. I think they grow up a little bit because I consider Medusa more like young adults. They are around 20 years old. Some of them are like younger. One of the leading actress was in both films, Mari. I don't know, but I'm a bit fascinated about these dynamics about groups. And as a woman director, I really want to talk about female characters. So it's two things that fascinated me: the group dynamics that sometimes makes you change your behavior because you are in a group, and talk about women. So I think, but for my next feature, I intend to change that a little bit.
Oh, okay. So you already know what your next feature will be.
I think I'm done a little bit of groups, but I'm a very, very early stage, but I want to, I still pursued, I think, with woman characters, but now they have an age more close to mine.
Speaking of, you talked about Mari Oliveira, the main actress. How do you cast her? How did you cast her in Máteme por favor, and why did you cast her again in Medusa?
In Máteme por favor and in Medusa, I made open calls for the youth casts. Like we announce in drama schools, we announce in Facebook and Instagram. And I like doing open calls to get to know people. And I like to test a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So in Kill Me Please, we made this open call and Mari went there. I think it was the first test she made on her life. She was 15. She saw it online and she went there and did the test. And I really liked her from the beginning. And when I was writing Medusa, I started to have her a lot in mind because I know that she was like this brilliant actress that maybe in Kill Me Please, I didn't explore so much how good she could be. And during these years between Kill Me Please and Medusa, she was someone that I was always observing, someone that was really interested about what's happening in the world, someone that keeps studying. She's someone that's finishing now film school as well. Mm. And so I started writing and having her in mind. But for most of the youth cast, we did open calls. And so for a lot of people in Medusa, that was their first feature.
Can you tell us a little bit about your use of colors in your films? Because the colors are very important and very bright.
In Kill Me Please, actually, we shot the film without using much colors.
Mm-hmm.
We shot it in a more blank way, with exception of some scenes, because it was like my first feature, the first feature of my DP. And I think we were a little bit afraid. But when we were doing the color grading of Kill Me Please, we start to think, why didn't we bring the colors to the sets? Why were adding the colors only in the color grading? What were we afraid of? And then for Medusa, since the beginning, we want to bring the colors to the sets. And also because the films were inspired from the 70s. We are a lot inspired by Suspiria, by films by Brian De Palma, by Dario Argento, by Mario Bava, by a lot of filmmakers that when they were doing films in the 70s, they had to bring the color to the set. And then for us, it was important to commit and bring the colors. And for me, it's very important to the film. I don't want the film to look like life as it is. I want the film to have a look that's not similar to what we're seeing with our eyes in the day-to-day life. For me, it's very important to bring everyone to this parallel universe where the colors are brighter. And for Kill Me Please, my starting point was the purple. I started thinking the purple as the color of Bia. There's a color that reminds me of vampires. And then, and it's close to the red, the color of blood. And for Medusa, I start to think as the green as the main color and the red as the opposite of it. So I start to think the green as the color of nature, the color of desire, and red, and a lot of purples and blues and pinks in the middle of it. But in Medusa, we use a lot of colors. It was important for us to bring this visual aspect and to commit with colors.
Do you want to keep on making genre films?
I think so. I don't know, but I think I'm more committed with the fantastic aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big David Lynch fan. I like when it's something, it's close to reality, but it's not. Another filmmaker from more the recent years that I love a lot is like Jordan Peele. That said, okay, it's life as it is. We said, no, it's not life as it is. I like when we can play a little bit with what's reality, what's fantasy. So my next project, I know have a lot of fantastic elements, but I don't know if it'll be as horrorish as the others, but it's still very early stage. I don't have a treatment. I have just some ideas that I'm trying to put together. I take forever in this early stage of the project. I take forever to commit with a 10-page treatment and to be sure about what I'm going to talk about, because when we decide to do a feature, it's at least like 7 years in Brazil. It's a lot of time to finance. So I have to be sure, is this the idea I want to have with me for the next 5, 7, maybe 10 years? So I have been starting and changing projects for since when I was editing Medusa, I started thinking, I have to think about my next project. But now I think things are getting more clear to me.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, this is difficult to be sure, is this the one?
Anyway, I cannot wait to see it, that's for sure. So thank you very much for talking to us about Medusa.
Merci beaucoup à Anita d'avoir répondu à mes questions. J'espère que ça vous a plu, j'espère surtout que ça vous a donné envie de foncer en salle pour voir ce film. N'hésitez pas d'ailleurs à faire vos retours sur le film dans les commentaires quand vous l'aurez vu. Merci infiniment d'avoir regardé cette vidéo et je vous retrouve très vite pour la suite.
Mariana, uma vez eu li que os nomes de garotas que começam com a letra M são nomes de meretrizes, Marias Madalenas, Messalinas, monstras. Isso aconteceu há muitos anos atrás. Ela devia ter a minha idade, mas era a mulher mais devassa de todos os tempos. Ela vivia aqui na nossa cidade, sempre bebendo, sempre dançando. A Melissa reinava. Era uma sexta-feira santa, em meio a todos os piores pecados que a gente pode pensar. Vem. Uma iluminada apareceu. Com uma mão, ela foi trazendo um copo com querosene. Com a outra, um isqueiro. E tacou fogo na cara dela. O senhor acha que eu tô possuída?
Você tem orado?
Sempre.
Queima, queima, Senhor. Queima meus pecados. Limpa o meu corpo. Limpa o meu corpo das tentações e dos pecados da carne.